This story unfolds.
What's up, everyone? Happy Friday, and welcome to the game on Pax8 Live, the show where we talk about all the cybersecurity shenanigans you need to be aware of. We have a really cool show today talking about MSP verticalization and multi-vertical support and whether or not you should maybe consider verticalizing your MSP, perhaps. Before we get started, let me cover all the basics. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. I've got the chat opened on YouTube right here on my other screen. We'll be watching it. Don't forget to sign up for Pax8 Beyond. That time for the early bird discount is running out. And with that, let's jump straight into the news.
Man,
So, Matt,
I know Beyond is a long way away, and I know you just mentioned the early bird part, but I am so excited for Beyond next year. I really am.
Very
I'm
pumped.
excited for the pre-day. I'm excited for seeing everybody. It was such a good one this first time. So, and I haven't even been able to break down to who the artist is that's coming. Right? Have you hacked in and gotten that data yet?
they're guarding it very well. I know the man who knows. Yeah, might have to break
It's
out
fair. We know who our
some
target
enhanced
is. We just
interrogation
haven't
on that
necessarily
one.
gotten it.
Yeah.
Well, it's awesome. I just got done wrapping up an event that we'll talk about here in a little bit, but got a couple of good pieces of news. Let's jump into them.
How about good news? Hackers
Fair.
breach healthcare orgs via Screen Connect remote access. This is this is a news story, but Screen Connect is a really old story. But let's
Yep.
broaden it out to remote access controls in general. So let's see what it is. Security researchers are warning that hackers are targeting multiple healthcare organizations in the U.S. by abusing the Screen Connect remote access tool. The actors leveraging local Screen Connect-wise instances used by transaction data systems, so supply chain management, pharmacy, supply company. Present in all 50 states. Researchers at managed security platform Huntress, shout out to Huntress, spotted the attacks and report seeing them on endpoints from two distinct healthcare organizations and activity indicating network reconnaissance and preparation of attack escalation. So they proceeded to take several steps. They installed additional tooling, which is very common, such as their own Screen Connect or AnyDesk, and they're just doing that to persist, right? This happened between October 28th and November 8th, likely still ongoing. Hunter reports that the attack features similar tactics, techniques, and procedures. These include downloading payload named text.xml. So these are known payloads. We don't have to dive through the mechanics of what the attack is, but the point being is right. I think I pushed this out right when this article came out of your remote access tools need very frequent access reviews and a very frequent review of how hardened that access tool is compared to your policy. I think back in the OG days of Screen Connect incidents, remember Kyle put out a bunch of recordings. It's actually kind of cool.
I remember seeing those. They were shocking.
Yeah. And there was like a default admin that people had forgotten about. They had SSR, they had MFA, one or the other, but there was that default admin account with a bad password. So you really need to audit that, understand anything that can access those environments. My other push should be, do you need persistent remote access to everything? My answer was no. Like I was trying to get rid of it on workstations, right? I wanted to ask permission to access a workstation. If the internet's down, I'm not going to access it anyways, right? So I would do away with it if it were me.
Well, and I think the reason these threat actors are doing this, right, is this understanding that they have a tool that you know should be there, right, that has access to have complete access to the system, usually running as system, has full permissions on the back end. And then to that point, they're able to exploit and bring in and load Metasploit. But back to your point, I don't think it makes sense to hold constant perpetual access to remote connections. I think that is one of the things that I would change from the way I did my business in the past. And for us, it was convenience. What was an MSP's guide in those days? It was about how efficient I can be. It's about how quickly I can solve a ticket. It's about SLAs. It's about white glove. It's about making it easy. It's about making it. That's why people bought those tools, is to actually do those things. And the problem is that wasn't when we were considering the impact of security. I think another takeaway that I also take from this is Screen Connect is one of the unique ones that allows you to do multiple installations of it as an instance, and each instance has somewhat of a GUID attached to it. So you'll see Screen Connect space, parenthetical denotation, these 12 characters or 14 characters, and the end parenthetical notation. What's interesting about that, and this is what Kyle and them were looking at, is they would get in on one Screen Connect session, right? However that might be, and then actually give themselves persistence via another one. And I think that's one of
Right.
the things that if I was a MSP, I would want to know the second something that didn't match that GUID got installed. I would want to know that as a complete, either something failed and an old script is running, or something didn't get uninstalled, or some threat actor or some MSP even potentially that's competing against you
Right.
is actually
Right.
installing their software. And so you
Right.
want to have that kind of presence to understand that. So I think that's some of my takeaways.
And I would start with workstations, right? Things that users are in front of.
Sure.
You can walk them through typing in their little code, and then you get your access. That's a
Yep.
significant reduction. So play with it. Try it with one customer, right? Tell them you're trying something new. You don't
Sure.
want persistent access to their workstations, and see how those procedures
And let us
work
know in
out.
the
And I
chat
think
if
you'll
you've done
find,
this.
yeah, for sure. And I think you'll find, honestly, that it doesn't interrupt you as much as you think it does, right? So long as you have an easy to follow process for getting to that page where you put whether it's Screen Connect or Logmein Rescue or whatever, it's not that hard to get people there, right? So give it a shot, or let us know if you have given it a shot, and let us know in the future if you do give it a shot.
Yeah, please let us know in the chat. And Travis Woods, it's awesome to see you, buddy. I haven't seen your beautiful face in probably 3 or 4 months. It's great to see you. Okay, let's grab this next article. Yeah, I know, right? This one is so funny. I say funny because it's kind of a little tongue-in-cheek funny, but Alfie or Black Cat ransomware operation has taken extortion to a new level. This is like quad extortion, right? Primary extortion would be the ransom, secondary extortion, or the encryption. Secondary extortion would be the threat of releasing information. Tertiary extortion would be attacking those victims that were part of that data breach. And this quad extortion is now something where they actually filed a response to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, complaint against one of their alleged victims, saying they didn't report it, that they didn't follow the 4-day rule to disclose their cyber attack, which actually I think doesn't go into effect until later this year in December. But still, said earlier today in this article, the threat actor listed the software company Meridian Link, their data leak, with a theory that they would leak, or with a threat that they would leak allegedly stolen data until a ransom was paid in 24 hours. They're a publicly traded company, which means they now have some new regulations of reporting to the SEC. The alleged lack of response to the company likely prompted the hackers to exert more pressure, right? This is, they didn't pay. Right. They aren't responding to me. We're now going to file a complaint with the SEC and disclose a cyber incident saying that customer data was impacted. And in their own words, the attackers told the SEC that Meridian Link suffered a significant breach and did not disclose it as required in their 8K under 1.05. But I think just to add to this, and we can cut back to us just chatting, the first piece was the 4-day business day regulation goes into effect later this year. So I don't think there's going to be an immediate outcome from that. But, one of the things that comes to mind initially is they have gotten worse press from this than they would have by disclosing, right?
Oh, for sure.
This has been on
really
everybody's mind. What are your thoughts on this, man?
My first question was, when you sent this, was who's going to show up if there were going to be a hearing? Who's the witness? Like, who is going to break the barrier?
Who's going to court to prove it?
But I digress. Maybe they're just going to send evidence enough to the attorneys. But yeah, it's quad extortion, man. Like, and I hadn't even thought of it. Like, the SEC coming out with these rules. It's very easy to report to the SEC. You can do it right on their website. If you think there's some sort of investor mistreatment happening. So it's, I don't know. Like, I'm curious to see if this continues to be a trend into the future, because there will still be companies that cover this stuff up or make an attempt to, right? So it's, it'll be interesting to see if threat acting groups continue to use this as a lever, and I think they will. It's a really smart lever, if you ask me.
It is
I didn't even look up what Meridian Link does, but
this morning, though, Dom, I saw that there's active proposed legislation right now in the House of Representatives to actually counter this and say, no, SEC, you are actually creating national security concerns doing what you're doing. This is not okay. We should not have people reporting directly to the SEC for these things. They should be details of their breach and the details to CISA and to IC3.
Right.
And so you're starting to see some pushback saying, no, maybe we want to use this data for national intelligence purposes. And I can actually count on one hand the times, 3 or 4 times now, that I've been involved with publicly traded companies that have found something material. The feds have stepped in and they have run their world for 8 months. How do you deal with that juxtaposition of an 8K filing at the same time you're being told to keep quiet because they're tracking the TTPs of this threat actor? at the
Well,
national
the
level.
FBI scares me a lot more
Yeah,
than the SEC, so I would just take it that
true
way.
story.
But
Yeah. I mean, Martha Stewart barely got a slap on the wrist, right? Like this works out pretty well for you in the SEC situation. I
I did
digress,
find
but
so Meridian
yeah, I
Link
think
does loan origination software, so nothing sensitive happening in
yes,
there
I
at
know
all.
who Meridian
Yeah,
Link is, and maybe we'll pick someone's brain on that. That's going to be
yeah.
joining us later because Meridian Link is part of software that deals with loan origination. Actually, they have another name for it, if I remember. Ben Griner just joined us. Said I was late to join. But I think you're all talking about avoiding remote control access by default. If so, I agree. I was pushing this in my MSP before I sold it, and it is possible you'll get initial pushback from your support team. Yeah, bro, preach it. But it is more secure, and as an MSP owner, I like the reduced risk, right? Like you're just choosing your risk. Matt Lombardo also said I agree. So I just want to bring those
I
comments
mean,
in.
I'll
But
say if you're getting
yeah,
more modern, you're deploying more modern infrastructure that runs smoother. You should have less support tickets, which means you're going to have the extra minute and a half, 2 minutes to get the remote support
yeah,
established, right? Um,
yeah.
I would
And
encourage
I remember it
everyone to
too.
just try it. Yeah.
I remember it too, though, Dom. You're like, no, front/help. No, it's at the front slash, right? The one left to the shift key on the right, not the other
So you know what
shift
I
key. No,
did?
right. And then,
It's like
oh,
I bought the
yeah, what's
domain
that?
startremotehelp.com. So then I would just you could also buy
Nice.
yourself a fancy name, like
Yeah, yeah. And you were just sending that over to whatever
yourcompanyhelp.com
the
or something.
front/slug you needed was. Yeah, yeah. Fair
Right,
enough.
right.
Lots of ways to overcome it. Thanks for chiming in from the chat. Please continue to do so, and we'll make sure we highlight them. Let's go ahead and grab the next news article. Dom, we'll switch over to that. Yeah, so Royal Ransomware Gang plans black suit rebrand, right? You've heard of your companies having marketing rebrands? Like this is kind of this situation.
Right.
U.S. government says Royal, one of the most active ransomware gangs in recent years, which I don't know if I agree with that, but that's okay. To rebrand or spin off with a new name as Black Suit. In an update this week to a previously published joint advisory to the Royal Ransomware Gangs, FBI, and U.S. Security Agency, Cybersecurity Agency, CISA, said that the Black Suit ransomware variant shares a number of identified coding characteristics similar to Royal, which means they're trying to spin off. They're creating a new ransomware set, or someone left,
Right.
confirming either earlier findings by security researchers linking the two operations. There are indications that Royal may have been preparing for a rebranding effort and or a spin-off variant, the government's updated advisory reads, which you and I both get these advisories. They are nice
Right.
to read. They come out and will give us a little bit of context. Royal's prolific ransomware gang accused of hacking. You kidding me? Come on, article. They're accused of hacking? I digress. 350 victims worldwide to ransomware demands exceeding $275 million. It is not uncommon for ransomware gangs to create different ransomware variants, go quiet for long periods of time, or spin off. And this kind of speaks towards that, right? And the Conti connection comes up in this as well. But we're seeing a rebrand. What are your thoughts on rebrand? Because I wouldn't call it a rebrand. I'd call it let's get some new OPSEC surface area and change so that last group doesn't appear anymore, and I can move on
Yeah,
to new infrastructure. But what are your thoughts?
you're adding fog to the battlefield at that point. I think it's either that or look, these are organizations full of humans, and humans argue with each other. We're really good at that. They could have just gotten
It's
pissed
true.
at each other and one spun off and wrote their own ransomware. And it looks very similar. So we probably won't know what happened. And if anyone does know, it's within certain confines that we're not privy to.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't think it's uncommon, right? It could be trying to hide. It could be like they legitimately just want to go by a different name, right? Like that could legitimately be a thing. So we don't know.
Sure.
But I think it's important to understand when these two things are linked because it gives you the ability for within that new organization, if you will, to predict what their TTPs are going to be.
Hot take. So why even have the
Oh,
RMM? Travis Woods
the
said.
hottest of
Boy,
takes.
he's trying to pull our string on this, isn't he? Gosh, you're not wrong, right? I mean, I think when we think about RMM, think about what its purpose was. It was to be our scripting engine. It was to run our automations to make us more efficient. It was the other one, but that's all very infrastructurally centric, right? And as you start seeing other platform type models where you have the ability to support the infrastructure, you have the ability to control the way the machine's running. Like, I think probably long term RMM probably doesn't persist either. I think at least in its current format for
I think
sure.
it's Lighthouse or CIPP or those type of platforms
Yeah,
are what will dominate, right?
100%.
Managing that cloud environment
MDM
at
management.
scale.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And it becomes more endemic with
Nerdio
the
launched
actual
a
platform
fantastic
itself.
Intune product not long ago, so I think they're seeing the writing on the
Sure.
wall. Like that's the direction it's going. So your product needs to manage those resources in the future.
Yeah, I agree 100%. All right, let's do this. I think we have one more article, I believe. Let's go ahead and do it. Local city declares state of emergency after cyber attack to use taxpayer money to investigate. I want to make sure that sinks in. They had to declare a state of emergency So they could follow whatever rules or regulations in their charter that allows them to use these funds to deal with the aftermath of a ransomware attack. The ransomware caused Huber Heights, the glorious, illustrious city of Huber Heights, to use a cell phone to broadcast Monday night's city council meeting over Facebook. The meeting happened a day after hackers hit several threat actors, hit several city departments like human resources and finance. Can't imagine why they'd go after those two. It's very
Right.
frustrating. Unfortunately, it's become much more common. A lot of people, a lot of places are getting impacted. And it's as easy as somebody opening the wrong email. Richard Zick, Huber Heights city manager, said. That's a little bit of a offshoot, but that's okay. So with the declaration of state emergency, the city plans to use $350,000 of taxpayer money from its general fund to investigate the attack. I'm hoping that's a third-party company, not just hiring people internally for it. The city's hoping insurance will reimburse some of that. That's fair. Dovin Clark and his fiancee, Tiffany Keaton, live in the city. For them to get on so fast, that's impressive. They're not taking any delays. Okay, I'll try not to let my jade show out. 911 calls are getting
He
answered.
doesn't
EMS
know,
fire.
you know.
Exactly. That's exactly my point. I digress. The investigation could take a few
Uh,
weeks as the city sorts out all this and so many of the residents. I think it's a scary because you just don't know, Keaton said. Just don't know.
so when I
I
found
think
this
this is
one,
interesting.
I went to the city's website, and I do want to give them a shout out because they said we're going to post an update every day at 2 p.m. So I went through it, and they were posting an update every day at 2 p.m. And the latest one included the forensic phase is complete, and we're moving to the restoration phase.
Nice.
So
Okay.
Um, shout out to them for. I don't like the statement about the wrong email and oversimplifying what may have happened,
That's my
but
point. Yeah.
but I do appreciate that they are doing what they can to keep their citizens up to date. They did what they said they're going to
Yeah.
do, and it according to the public statements, they did a forensic phase and they're recovering now. So we shall see. Um,
Yep.
but
And I
hey,
think it's
municipalities are
maybe a
still getting hit.
takeaway. Well, I think another takeaway should be adequate understanding of funding as an organization for incident response. I mean, not just these
Right,
cities, not just that, but any company understanding, hey, what am I actually going to have to do? And as insurance continues to change, as we start seeing co-insurance models, or in our case, when we paid our ransom, we had to pay our ransom with our credit card first, and then they
right,
reimbursed it, right? So those are cash flow challenges. And I think a city's more structured. They have very restricted funds, right? This is for the road-in tax. This is for, and so you have some of those challenges. But it's just interesting to see a what's the story of the flowers and the styrofoam cups? Man, it was a party, bro. It was a party, Bill Butler. I just had to answer you that way. But no, I think I think that people need to budget for incident response. I think having a retainer for incident response is a prudent method. When we were at our former MSP, Dom, we had a retainer on call for incident
right.
response. Why? So that when I picked up that phone, my incident response team was already handled. I already had cash in their hands. There wasn't a cash flow challenge. But not every company can do that, and certainly not every city can do that. But that's what stuck out to me on this one, Dom, was that they had to actually go get a state of emergency declared so they can tap into the budget to actually have the
Well, and
cash
it
flow
illustrates,
to do
right?
this.
Your property tax dollars or whatever, sales tax is now going towards that instead of whatever it was intended to go towards.
True story.
That's,
Yep.
that could be payroll. Like who knows? The impact
Sure.
is significant, and it's hard for these small cities to fund cyber, right? So
Yeah.
shout out to CISA because I know they're doing a lot to help people like Sam Alva, etc. But
Yeah.
man, these municipalities
And,
and
and
school districts, it sucks.
Bill Butler, great to see you. Matt Lombardo, awesome as well. Mike Perry said, nothing like using taxpayer funds to investigate their vulnerabilities that could have gone to other programs. And I like the way you
Right.
worded it, their vulnerabilities, right? Like these are, one
Right.
threat actor gang last year called it post-paid pen tests, right? That
Post-paid
they
pen
weren't
tests.
hackers, they weren't ransoming, they were post-paid pen tests. Where if we
So I
win,
saw
I'm
Travis
going to
Woods
ransom you
made a
and you're going to
comment
pay me.
too, and he's seen small town RFPs where they don't really know how to purchase or plan for better security
Sure.
posture, and that's
Yeah,
fair.
sure.
Like they might not have the expertise to write an RFP because they don't know what they need, which
Yeah.
begs a whole nother question. Like, do you write an RFP for the consultant who's going to write the art? Like, there's a lot of challenges in government
Well, and
purchasing and skill levels that come in there.
true story. Well, and this triggers me too, because even when they do select somebody else to transfer that third party risk, to your point, the RFPs don't have the things asked in it. I actually just had an MSP and a security researcher reach out to me, and there are about, I don't know, a couple hundred counties out there right now in the Midwest that all have their property record databases that can be searched. Right, that's not uncommon. But typically those property record databases have redacted records, judges, people that need protecting, police chiefs, things like that. And they had a directly exposed SQL that allows you to modify that SQL query and select those protected records without any restriction, if you know what you're doing, for hundreds of counties. I could go dump the judge home address. Also, by the way, if you have a personal trust, don't name your personal trust your name and then try to hide your house in it. That probably isn't going to protect you very much. And a lot of them do it, Dom. Not allegedly, but at least in my quick research. But anyways, the point being, there's counties paying this company for software that hasn't been updated since 2016. It has at least 10.0s available. It's running Apache from 3 years ago. And it breaks my heart because someone has been paid for that. And when that county gets nailed or a judge gets killed, it'll be tied back to somebody having terrible cyber posture and then selling it to someone else that your city tax dollars and county tax dollars go to. So get off my dang soapbox before I fall and my neck.
Understand that a lot of those software vendors, some of the code in there was absolutely written in the 90s and has never been touched.
100%.
Like they just
put a new date on
it. Keeps working.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So absolutely. Let's kick over brilliant words from Robin Harris and we'll come back.
As we go into the holiday season, starting with Thanksgiving all the way up through Christmas, we're going to have to be extra diligent about cybersecurity. The phishing scams are going to get absolutely crazy. And I know you guys probably have people like my family. They love to save money. They love all of these sales, and the bad guys know it. So you're going to see all of these offers for, getting all of these discounts and you're going to have to be extra careful about what you're clicking on. I'm serious because we kind of counted on them having telltale signs like misspelling and all kinds of, grammar mistakes, but they're getting more and more sophisticated and their scammy materials are looking more and more legitimate. How are you going to tell whether this is a legitimate email or whether it's a phishing scam? So you're going to have to really look at links, look at what the links are, look at who they're coming from. And this is going to happen at work. You'll be getting all of these emails at work. You're going to be getting them at home. Your family is going to be getting them all together. We're going to have to raise the awareness, not only of ourselves as employees, with our colleagues, but also with our families. Because the last thing we want is for the holiday to involve a breach. And something else people don't think about, how many of you have a GPS unit in your car and you have home programmed in it? And then you've got your car garage opener. So if somebody breaks into your car, if you've got home programmed into your GPS and they have access to your remote control to your garage opener, guess what? You just gave them free access into your house if they break in your car. Or if you have things in your glove compartments, don't put things in your glove compartment that have your address on it. Because again, all they have to do is open the glove compartment, read the address. You just gave them free pass to come into your home and do whatever. And another thing you need to think about is if you use valet services or places where you give them your keys, you need to have your car key separated from your home key. You don't want to hand all your keys to the valet. Now they got keys to your house, they got keys to your car, they got keys to your office. You don't want to do that. I know it feels like, oh, do we have to do all of this? And I promise you, taking these extra precautions is going to keep you safe. When we're looking at online shopping, you're going to be getting all of these offers for credit cards. And, so you click on the link and you go and you apply for this new credit card and you give them your social security number. And all of a sudden, now the bad guys have it. So this is really the season. 'Tis the season to be diligent. Fa la 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 la. Right. And have a happy and a blessed and a safe holiday.
All right. Well,
Brilliance
we're
from
back.
Robin.
Yes, as usual. And I hope you are taking some time off next week if you're watching this to enjoy your loved ones and families. I'd love to see some comments down. If anybody's doing anything cool or special, plop it in the comments. We'll bring it up. But we've got a really cool guest with us here today, and we're in the same room. I guess as you might be able to probably discern. But yeah, Shawn, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody in the audience, kind of let us know what you do and who you're with.
Yeah, Shawn Fox, Director of Sales and Marketing for Premier One, and I spend my life on the road calling on title companies to try to sell IT infrastructure and cybersecurity for them. Is that a good way of saying it?
I think that's perfect.
I think I'm just always away from the house.
Nailed it.
It's true, but almost as much as me.
Yeah.
What's funny, when we were before the show, and I think this will become quite poignant, you introduced yourself as not being a MSP, but what? You said, I don't think of myself as an MSP. What do you think of yourself as?
I obviously I work for an MSP,
Sure.
but I sell to the title world. So I'm a sales rep for the title industry is what I know the background of the industry. I know how they need to be set up. I just know all the different softwares they use.
Sure.
And so it's the title knowledge that helps me accomplish my goal on the MSP side. So when I'm going out and talking to a client, I actually talk more about title rather than I do talk about the actual MSP side
and
of
the
it.
MSP.
Yeah.
We're going to get to that. So we're at TitleCon. So Shawn and I are at a conference called TitleCon, which by its name sounds like it would be about titles and a conference. So that's where we are. And it was awesome. And we'll get into that here in just a minute. But let's go ahead and show some footage from TitleCon. And then we'll come back and kind of kick into my theory of what we want to talk about today. And then we'll go from there. So.
Sometimes it helps to think about things in a different perspective. There's actually a phishing kit. So phishing kits are like pre-made mail messages that allow me just to use those and send it to you, and it looks like Microsoft. When the ransomware happens, your data is exfiltrated. And a lot of people ask, well, I don't care. They don't care about me. I'm just a little old guy or gal. Nope. Especially in your world, there's almost immediate monetization. They want to extract passwords from your plain text documents, things that they want to use against you. Your date of birth, your social security number, info stealer, information they want to take. There's people that actually sell that, right? So now that I've stolen that, I could be an identity broker. I could just sell identity. I could just sell credit card. I could just sell those type of things from that initial compromise. That's how they do business.
Okay.
Is that in
So
the pink pants
this is
section?
TitleCon. It was pink pants.
It was
It's
pink pants.
presentation
Pink
day.
pants.
If I'm in pink pants, it's Prezzo day for sure. And it's only Prezzos on stage because nobody sees what pants I have on now as we sit. So it's kind of nice.
If any.
It's only pink pants for stage time, right? If any, you don't know. Heck, who knows? It'd be more awkward for Shawn.
That would be a little
awkward.
awkward if you didn't have your pants on right now.
But that said, go ahead and roll some of the pictures of TitleCon. And I want to make a pitch of why we're here to talk about this today and why I think this matters. What I believe is happening in our world is we are seeing a commoditization of tech and what it takes to support that, right? There's an MSP in Oregon that Sheldon and team over there that have taken their MSP and went 100% all Azure AD with every client, where they got rid of those, and their support desk tickets went down 40%. So you actually have this playing out where I feel like the commoditization of tech, think back to when you used to put jumpers on IRQ ports, right? We don't do that anymore. We just buy a laptop and turn it on and sign into stuff, right? We're not doing as many of those things, and it's easier to support. So how do you replace that value? How do you still offer value as an MSP to someone when it's a commodity for the most part? You have to be able to differentiate yourself and move into those things that make that company more valuable itself. What I mean by that is, what if I have two NHL teams? They all have an average height of the same thing. They all have average capabilities as players. They all have all the same pieces. They have the same skates. They have the same hockey sticks. They have the same everything else. How does one team consistently win? They're better coached. They understand the other team's flaws better. They are more nuanced in that. And my belief is MSPs will have to start verticalizing in order to know that client's business well enough in order to actually provide as much value and help them win against the other title company down the road. So that's kind of the intro. Someone asked us to define what is title to make sure that everybody understood. What is a title company? Well, help me understand that.
So it's title insurance. So when you buy a house, you get that stack of papers, hopefully not as many papers these days, but it's essentially, they are the hub for everything in the real estate transaction. So everything from the realtor to the lender, at the end of the day, the title company is that hub and provides all that information. And ultimately, they are the company of record, and so the security around it is really the main focus. So you were talking earlier about the potential data breach. That is a big concern in our industry because the amount of NPI that is sitting within
what's NPI?
Non-public information.
Okay, we got an acronym from my man here. Awesome. Okay, good. We define our acronyms here. So if you got any more in store, define them. I won't have to ask you. But to your point, so title companies make money how? How does a title company make money? Because I know you're going to know this answer.
Yeah, I mean, they get fees on everything. So at the end of the day, you have your closing costs and that you have everything goes towards the bank. But a title company has all their different fees, whether it's for like a lien search, a Patriot search, all those little items within a title transaction add up to a fee. And then you have your closing costs that you get at the end of the day. So
and commission on the insurance products that they sell, right? The title insurance. So those are the summated money they make, essentially.
And so, and then obviously they work with different underwriters. They have to work with different splits with a different underwriter. So if it's Fidelity, Old Republic, and that's where you look at a title company. You can be a direct, meaning that it is, so Fidelity has direct agents. So they only write with Fidelity. Or you're an independent title agency and you can write with First American, Fidelity, Stewart, or whatever. So based off those relationships as well, that's also how they make money.
In sales, does knowing that help you know who you're talking to as an audience? Like if you know they're an independent agent, does that give you more knowledge and more context of what you're walking into from a sale perspective too?
Yeah, because usually if it's a direct agent for Fidelity tends to basically implement their guidelines. An independent agent has more flexibility to pick their vendors that they have set up. But yeah, for me, so I guess a little background, I used to work for a title company and Premier One was my IT vendor. And so when, I transitioned over was to say, okay, hey, I think we have a good market here for, me. I don't want to work for a title company anymore. I actually want to go sell IT and security. So yeah, it helps out a lot to know whether or not it's an independent agent or a direct agent, because then you got to talk to them on specific levels. For us, we also give discounts to direct agents because they'll refer more business to us. So I've set up a partner relationship with the underwriters.
I see. What I'm trying to highlight here is I feel like your company, from the entry level tier one tech to the VCIO to the sales team, all know your companies and clients better because of how homogeneic they are, at least how much they are in these verticals of this structure.
Yeah. So title specifically is very structured. There's a lot of compliance around it, obviously, with the amount of data that's sitting there. They have Alta best practices.
What is Alta? American
Land Title Association. And last.
Got to do them.
Yeah.
Got to do them.
I like the noise. So, we work with American Land Title Association to identify the title companies. When we're sitting there, you talk about the industry in general. Our team and how I've kind of gone about doing it is I will actually set up lunch and learns for our whole company. And so one of the vendors here that was at TitleCon, we'll book an hour out with our whole staff and we'll record it. So our techs are actually trained on the vendors too. So if they're actually getting a support call at the end of the day, when they close out that support ticket, they're supposed to say, is there anything else we can help you with? Oh, we're looking, for a program software that helps against wire fraud. Okay, well, you can use Certified or Closing Lock. And so, the idea, again, I'm a little bit different on the MSP side on how I go about selling it. I establish a lot of partners and set up referrals through these relationships. And so with the Resware, SoftPro, these are title production systems. TPS, there's another one for you. So I, as being the only salesperson for a long time, I obviously can't go everywhere. And so the easiest way for me to do that was to go establish a relationship with one of the vendors and then start doing referrals back and forth.
Gotcha.
So they act as more or less my sales team at that moment.
So Dom, you and I both had different practices. We weren't heavily verticalized. I would say we fell into some natural verticals, right? And that manufacturing was big in our city, stuff like that became there. But what are your thoughts on
we
this?
had a lot
Dom?
of butts and desks was like our specialty, and we actually I wouldn't have taken manufacturing customer, but I was only verticalized to the point where it's like it needs to be butts and chairs at desks, reliant on the computer type people, which lawyers,
Gotcha.
accountants. Maybe I would have explored title companies, probably not, because I know some of the compliance in there and I don't want it. So more power to you. But yeah, and I found value in that. I at least had a really deep understanding of the life of an office worker and what they feel when things don't work, right?
Because would you if we were voting, Dom, and you were doing this again, would you verticalize or not verticalize? And if you're in the chat, tell me what your
100%
thoughts are on
verticalize.
verticalization. Okay, help me
I
understand.
would start
Why?
with
What are
one
some of the
vertical.
benefits?
I would start
Yep.
with one vertical. I don't know what it would be, so I'm not going to pick one. And I would master that
Sure.
vertical, understand the ins and outs of the business. How does their cash flow work? What do their P&Ls look like? Because you start to understand what business impacts you can make. How can I boost the top line instead of just the bottom line? I don't want them to cut costs. I want them to make more money and pay me more, right? And we all win. But honestly, I think depending on what market you serve, if you're geo-locking yourself, which it doesn't sound like you guys are because you're on the road all the time, but if you're geo-locking yourself, you might saturate a given vertical in your area. So I would probably, as I mastered one, look at maybe divisioning out. If I'm in
Agreed.
healthcare, maybe I do move into finance or whatever. But I think if you have specialists who really, really understand a business and not just the nerdy bits, but the actual flow of business, there's a lot of power that you can bring to them and valuable service you can deliver.
Yeah, if we were doing a pro-con list, right, I think you nailed one of the cons, Dom. You have to have a vertical that has enough size and scale that even if you only gain X market, percentage in your given market, you can still make money. You can still be profitable. You still have enough business to chase. Or, to your point, you don't remain geo-locked. You now hunt for customers all over the world, right? Or country or whatever you think you can support, at least in that statement. And so I think that's probably one of the cons of verticalizing. I think the other con of verticalizing was seen very much in the pandemic, right? When we first started, the very verticalized in retail, very verticalized in some of those suffering spaces really suffered, right? And that's the other side of it. Have y'all had any impact from that con of being very limited to title?
The one con, like being verticalized, how we are in the title industry, the last 18 months has been horrible for title companies. So we grow as that vertical grows.
What makes it horrible? Tell me what makes
interest
that a bad
rates.
thing. Okay.
So when the interest rates spiked last year, because usually they happen over a gradual time, over like 4 or 5 months.
5 this last year.
Yeah, and so last year it went from like 3% to like 6% within a month.
Right.
And for title companies, unfortunately, I mean that's all of a sudden that shuts down the home buying process because no one's going out there. They're already locked in at a 3% rate. They're not going to refinance for a 6% rate.
Sure.
So
you lose refinances and acquisitions and purchases.
Yeah. So for us, we took a hit on that vertical market because of the industry and the interest rates that affected that actual title insurance industry. We're a little bit different as well. We don't have a minimum. We have a minimum in our contract, but I never enforce it. Like
people probably flex up and down based on the scale in their world
all the time. Yeah. So we didn't lose any clients during the title. Like we lost end users. So that's in their title companies laying 20 people off at a time, 25 people off at a time. That impacts our bottom line numbers as well. So. The last year has been how do we recover those end users that we lost, and we're back to actually our numbers where we were. So
is that both through growth of the companies again, and also new logos, or mostly new logos?
No, there hasn't been really a new hiring process yet. They're still laying companies employees off. So it's a rough market right now. So the con is that
contraction is contraction. It sucks and it affects you unilaterally. Right?
So in comparison. Now, I don't want to be, for the last year, I've been traveling around visiting community banks, like $1 billion in assets and below, because their footprint is almost identical to a title company.
How so?
So they'll have, one main office that may have an on-prem environment sitting there that they're trying to move to Azure, and then they have, 10 to 20 different satellite offices for those banks.
Yep.
And so it's pretty like we can't go, that's a target market that I looked at. So
almost a second vertical,
Yeah,
but
it's a second.
tangential
So-
vertical to Dom's point earlier.
so we're good in the title space. I would say we're probably the best in the title space. That's, now from my standpoint, I'm trying to identify another vertical that's going to
Yeah.
help Premier One out to grow.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so the sales team now is calling on title companies while I'm going out and doing research on another
What does a
vertical.
bank need?
Yeah.
And you picked another fairly regulated environment.
Yep.
I actually did a talk to the largest MSP that serves community banks, to all their community banks, like 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
So maybe they'll introduce you to a few. Maybe not.
I might know.
Maybe they. Okay. But I did. I talked with a bunch of them, and it's interesting because community banks are in this weird place where they have a lot of compliance that's governed by, by the regulators, but FFIEC is way behind.
Yep.
Like the regulations don't match what reality is today. The last time they updated their outsourcing IT was 2006.
Oh yeah.
Like things have changed since 06 a little bit, like this much. This much has changed in the
Smidge.
MSP world since 06. Yeah, just a smidge. I also have some comments I wanted to tackle here. Really, Bill Butler said, "Were those corduroy pants?" Nope, they're Tommy Bahama at Barclays. Mike Perry, Winnie the Pooh style no pants. True story. Done it before. Not on camera though. And then the last one, LinkedIn user says, "Pants on or no pants, mask going hacking." That's a true story. You must know me well. But yeah, I digress. Anyways, so we've talked about the pro of, verticalization, in my opinion, probably makes you a better fit, a better partner, and a better coach for your company. You know their software. To your point, you already had 2 to go to for fraud management.
Yep.
You already had 5 to go to for ID validation. You already knew who was going to work. And more importantly, as you think about vCISO and vCIO, Dom, how much more does verticalization make you effective, and then why?
Well, it's
as
funny
a-
because you
as a-
mentioned
as a
you mentioned
CIO?
wire fraud, and I'm a cyber guy,
Yeah,
and I bought
yeah.
my house. I don't know, it's going on a year and 7 months or something like that ago, and everything was great until the title company started emailing me bank account numbers with no other form of authentication, and like, call this number and it's us.
That's
we
not
swear.
one of our clients. That's not one of our clients.
I won't name and shame, but I think just that alone, having that deep understanding of like, you have to wire money or do some other form of certified funds, right? Legally to
Yep.
finish real estate transactions, how it works. And that's terrifying because wire fraud is one of the easiest crimes to pull off in all financial crimes.
Sure.
You just got to convince someone to type a different number, right? So I think
Yeah, you already
having
got the
those
ABA.
sort of
You're
deep,
good.
right. So having those sort of deep, intricate understanding, I think is really valuable in whatever industry you're working in, right? If you understand exactly what sort of scrutiny community banks or maybe the medical offices in your area are facing from the state rather than the Fed, you can start to have really targeted conversations. And to your point, you get a phone call, you know exactly who you're going to start a conversation with. That's extremely valuable.
Right.
You don't have to waste time researching. You just already have the solution for them. And as a business owner, I would love that, right? Quick phone call, already know who to talk to and start getting things done instead of researching.
The other thing I'd add is the scalability of it, right? What I mean by that is, like, think back when you were a VCIO, or if you've held that position, or I know you acted in that capacitance, and you're trying to research what software company A should go with so they can get rid of the crappy software they're using today that's full of security holes, tons of things. You're trying to research that. The work that goes into that research only scales to the number of clients that need that research, the number of ones that would like for you to figure out what's the best one. Is it Resware? Is it? And what's interesting about verticalization is when you do that research, you can make that a principal function. You could research it all the time. You could stay up to date. In fact, you could have the executive meetings you wanted to have. Like, there was one manufacturing company that used Global Shop, right, as their ERP, or enterprise resource planning. So they use Global Shop. And Global Shop, I needed to know, as a VCIO and as a vCISO, were they planning on going away from their .NET local infrastructure methodologies and moving towards a SaaS option? And the reason I wanted to know that is that was the plan my client wanted to go down. Well, if the answer is no, I need to be able to strategically figure out what they need to do next. What's the changeover look like? When are they going to move? What does it take operationally to change? What's the quote look like? What are we going to be able to do in the new software? What softwares are out there? If you do that research in a vertical, I would imagine you use it over and over and over again.
Oh, nonstop. I mean, that's, like I said, I talk about the IT infrastructure and the security probably at the end of the whole transaction. You know, the whole time I'm trying to learn what they're doing. So you're talking about title production softwares, resware's out there. So if a company cuts over from resware to SoftPro, based off of state laws, they have to maintain that data for 7 to 10 years.
And you know that, first off.
You know that.
So you know this, which is good.
So, but when they switch that production software, it's the industry is a little archaic in how some of their
blowing my mind right now, Shawn Fox.
They're a little archaic in how they set up these systems. There's only one real SaaS platform out there right now.
Okay.
All the other ones have to be hosted somewhere. And for us, we would love to get rid of Azure altogether and just
not have any compute resource to protect
endpoints. But so if you switch from resware to SoftPro, you still have to hold on to that SoftPro instance.
So you have resware instance.
So you're running. Oh yeah, you're running your resware. And then that turns into legacy data.
Right.
Now your SoftPro is live data.
Right.
And so, but you still have to maintain a license for resware in order to be able to access the files. And so we actually, in our environments, in our Azure environments, we are hosting 2 production platforms because they have to maintain them.
Wow. So not only do you have the one, you now need to know that if you're coming in as an MSP, and let's say you didn't know this, and you're like, we're going to switch you over to this one. You're only going to be relying on that company to go, hey, Dom, I can't delete the old one. You didn't know that? Like, how much more awkward does that make you feel as a project planner to not know those basic things? And yet, back to that first initial pro, you have all that. You know it when you walk in as a salesperson.
Well, from the VCIO perspective, like from a VCIO perspective, you automatically understand that if they want to switch, you have to help them budget in that 7 to 10 years of runway of having 2 systems live and ready to go, which is a dramatic increase in cost.
Oh, it's huge.
Right, for switching software. If you're running 2 production environments, that's expensive as hell. But you can help them budget that. You can approach that. If they approach you, you're already ready to have that conversation, which is huge.
Yeah. I mean, so I'll talking to a company in Indiana. They're sitting on 90 terabytes of data.
Okay.
You throw that into Azure, it is ridiculously expensive.
Sure.
So we have to spend the next, I don't know, like month or so going through it with Chris and I, and we'll look at the data. Can we move like 80%?
Just go to cold storage.
And then their live data is maybe, on a, so we're going to look at how
Would you just carve that out at the database table level? Is that what you have? And do you have those relationships with those vendors to know what's possible in some of those things? Is that something I've done this once, I know I can do this way next time?
Yeah, so we have access to it. So we can, we act as tier 1 support and tier 2 support for most of these production systems.
Sure.
So our team is trained on resware.
Wait, let me hear that one more time. Dom, this I think is a novel difference. You're actually supporting their line of business software directly. You know enough about it.
We know enough about it that we can support it. Julie in our company I call her my RAM Quest guru.
Okay.
If there is anything that RAM Quest related, I just
I hadn't even thought about that. You have not only verticalization, but you actually have units of one as SMEs of software.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
that's huge.
So, so we try to fix the problems in the title production system unless we have to escalate it to the actual company. But even then, we still maintain that ticket. So the customer is not having any interaction with the production system company because we are always maintaining that ticket.
In the sales process, is that seen as a differentiator when you say that?
So this is a sales, I call it the one throat to choke type of approach.
Right. Yeah.
In my world.
Well, I've said that, but I was full of crap. We didn't know every software that was out there. We just said we'd have to still call and act like support. I mean, I really had to call support for support.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure, because others have said that.
Yeah.
One throat to choke. We were too. Send me a ticket. It meant I'd be sending it off to the other vendor, right?
But like things like, just installing an AT&T internet, like ISP, right? They're a pain to deal with. So we manage, all that process. So when you're so our client is just looking at Premier One. They're not having to talk to AT&T. They're not having to talk to all the different vendors.
And a lot of MSPs are doing that part, but they're not getting deep in the LOB software and deep in the weeds of fixing, the way this is structured or how we have
We can do it faster than the title production companies.
That's kind of the point. Yeah. It's really interesting. So, Tom, can you think of any other cons to verticalization? Like, I think for me, it would be probably scalability to your initial point, but what else can you think of?
I think we hit the biggest two. Like the thing, and I looked at it at my MSP, and the thing that paranoid me the worst is, what happens when that industry has a downturn and what's my recovery plan for that, which is why I would really want to grow into more than one vertical and be multi-verticalized. Like say you had one of them I was looking at was medical, and we were really talking to a lot of elective type medical facility like surgery centers and things like that.
Sure, plastic surgery.
During the
things like
pandemic, that would have absolutely it would have disappeared, right? Most of those clinics I talked to are probably gone. So I think if you're really cognizant of how that market that you're wanting to serve functions at a high level, like I would imagine you already understood that if home sales go down, less title transactions are happening, and you need to be ready for that. I think if you're planning your business, you need to understand, here's the downturn I could see if this happens. What's my backup plan, right? Do I have reserve cash, or do I have a backup vertical that I'm servicing? So my biggest thing would be, if I was going to do it, I would master the first one, but really want to look into a second one. It is not, from a financial markets perspective, the same, perhaps tangential, but not the same. It's not going to feel the same impact as the same economic event, right?
Yeah. Which is interesting. I think the other thing that I come up with is a pro would be, if I deeply verticalize, I'll understand enough tangential verticals that could be that offset, right? Like perhaps rental properties do really well in a time that this isn't, or perhaps things like that, where I could actually have offsetting verticals. Right. But I think the challenge that comes with verticalization like that is, if you wanted to scale, you also have an N+1 challenge, meaning you've got to have a VCIO that knows that industry. You've got to have a tech that knows that industry. You've got to have a help desk that knows that industry. So everything you do, you're not able to get the same synergies, I think, out of that. I'll use this human. Like, for example, in our org, we had, let's say, 20 verticals. Well, one VCIO might work on 17 of those, and you have that crossover. But if you wanted to verticalize, and I'd love to take your thoughts on this, as you add more verticals, do you dilute the value you provided when everybody knew title by adding in banking, by using the same humans? And do you try to strive to have separate humans to solve that problem?
So we've had a lot of conversations on the director level of pods.
Pods help this a lot.
In our company to set up a pod. So right now we haven't gotten to that point yet. So once we start bringing on more of that new vertical, then we're going to have a real discussion, because
how do we do this?
How do we do this? Because it is a completely different process, completely different systems that we're managing. And that is, so we are road mapping for, if this vertical grows like the title vertical, do we have separate teams working just in that industry? And so that way we don't dilute our service on the title side.
If I was voting, it'd be a yes. I think the other thing that you have as a unique advantage today that goes away when you start adding in other mixes is, if you're verticalized, you can write really good SOPs. Like, you can write really, really good instructions. You can write really good stuff.
There's a lot of standardization in our environment.
I imagine.
And because that helps for turn time on support tickets.
And the person you don't have to hire is high end of a person to do the tier 1 and tier 2 work, because you can write the tier 1 and tier 2 answers for them predominantly, right? So that's a huge thing. And I think that you now have a different type of person. What I mean by that is, if you're working in 100 different verticals and there's no rhyme or reason, you better be fast and flexible. You have to be able to understand persona differences and things that change from environment to environment very well, which makes you have to have a more dynamic human doing that. As a technician, as a VCIO, as a VCISO, that path.
Being the help desk guy that takes a call from like a nonprofit at 8:30 in the morning, and then the pissed off lawyer at 8:45, you'll very quickly understand like the difference between the personas and industries, because it's insane. Lawyers love not being able to bill.
End of the month for title companies, we have to be ready, because that's when they are sitting in their closing office. That's when they are getting those checks to do the closing, and the escrow office sitting there. And if they can't print a check, their world is just coming.
Their whole closing schedule gets screwed.
So at the end of the month, for like the last week of the month, we are just waiting. We have people tagged in our companies that are clients that are VIPs, so we know that
who's going to be the most impacted.
If we know that person's probably doing closings on the 28th of the month, we're going to move them up in the ticket queue.
That's cool. And so back to that point, the con being that N+1 scaling challenge, right? I'm going to have everything. I'm going to have one more copy of that in order to scale. I do want to tackle something called pods, because that was such a critical thing for us as we scaled. One of the challenges when we got to that 5, I think, or so million range, $3 to $5 million range in revenue, is companies started saying, Matt, I don't have the intimacy we used to have. Right? Because you're now getting a new person every time. You don't have the same Johnny or Sally or Bill or whoever it may be. And so the way we solved that was, we had 2 pods, Team Alpha and Team Bravo. And those 2 pods had infrastructure admins at the top. These would be your tier 2, tier 3 guys that
Yep.
can talk business, that can talk to the client, that own the relationship. And underneath, they shared 4 sysadmins. So you had
Yep.
6 people to 2 pods.
Yep.
And those pods would handle 25 to 30 companies. But now you got down to a point where it was always Johnny and always one of these 4 people. And if Johnny was out, an equal value, someone that's quite read in would be the person that jumps over and serves their tickets and needs.
Yep.
And the way it would work is help desk would take the front end of those tickets as a non-podded pool, and then that help desk would push that to the pod if they couldn't solve it in 15 minutes, and the pod would take it from sysadmins and prioritize. But what's interesting about the pods is you could have a dedicated pod. You just say Team Alpha and Team Bravo are our title, Team Charlie and Team Delta are that bank or other vertical that you guys end up selecting. So I do think that's a pretty smart answer to that problem. It's from a scalability perspective.
And we're getting to that point where I think 42 employees right now.
Sure, that's about where we were when that intimacy.
And so
happened.
we're hitting that point as the directors of the company say, okay, how are we moving forward? How are we structuring this? Are we having an onboarding team? Are we just having a service team? We have a dev team within our company as well. So that we're in the beginning phases of, okay, how do we scale appropriately as an MSP, and how do we keep the same service for our clients?
100%.
And those are legitimate conversations that we're trying to figure out right now.
Yeah. I think if I was voting, and maybe we're at this point in the show, we have 2 minutes, 59 seconds. So Dom, have I convinced you? And anybody in the audience, tell us what we think. Do you verticalize? Do you not verticalize at all? Or do you try to do multi-verticals as a solution to some of the challenges in the cons section? So Dom, where would you fall?
I was going to take my option money and run someday and start an MSP. It would absolutely be verticalized.
Yeah, absolutely. Multi-vertical, I think you said you'd work into second
Start
vertical,
with one.
so ultimately multi-vertical. Yeah.
Master
You're
one.
already verticalized. You don't get to vote. I'm voting verticalized. Unless we get 3 votes from the audience that verticalized is wrong, I think we have scientifically proven verticalized is better. I don't know if that's a little histrionic,
answer.
but I think it's the answer. We'll have to see if Qualis will back us up on this.
I see Willis. I think he would verticalize, so that's another vote.
Yeah, Willis looks vertical. He looks like a vertical for sure. Yeah, I got him. So
Yeah.
got a couple other points in the chat, right? Ben Greiner said, great show. Thanks for sharing. Good to see you, Matt. And we had a couple others maybe in YouTube as well. But
so I missed it. There's Travis Woods came into the YouTube, and this question was probably asked a hot minute ago.
Do it.
So first of all, we were talking about the prediction of verticalization. He says that was confirmed as a prediction for the next 3 to 5 years, the Canalys event, which I hear is a fantastic event. So there we go. Canalys is predicting it.
Well, if Canalys said it, I'm in.
About stuff.
We're good.
Yeah. Positive Energy 347 says vertical, but Trav also said, and maybe you can, maybe you don't know, have things changed in the title industry since the Old Republic title incident or breach? Which I'm actually not familiar with.
Yeah.
A lot has changed. We grew significantly because of a big ransomware attack in our industry. One of the competing MSPs got hit with ransomware, and we were spinning new clients up for 2 weeks, spinning up Azure environments. So it is, what's the most politically correct way to say it? The title industry is always lacking behind on everything that they do. It's always seems like they're 3 years behind.
I signed more wedding signatures on closing day than
right?
I think I've signed my whole life.
Like talking security to title companies is like, they're like, we don't need that. I'm like, you need all of this. Like you guys are the most
susceptible. Cash cow.
Yeah, exactly. But it's still hard to get them to buy in. So I spend a lot of my time just trying to educate them, hence TitleCon. Educate title clients on what the security they need to be in place, the right infrastructure they need to be in place. Are you looking to grow? Is it scalable?
Yeah.
And so, but there's been a couple other breaches since the Old Republic one as well.
And some of these title companies lost everything. And real quick, one thing I want to touch on as well, we didn't really touch on this to begin with, is what made me think of this show was TitleCon last year.
Yeah.
I sat in the audience at TitleCon last year, and I watched 2 gentlemen, I think one was Fidelity, one was another title insurance company, say, if you in the audience, and I'm paraphrasing, but if you in the audience don't get a proper cybersecurity program in place, we could see us cutting your commissions from 30% to 20%. Could you imagine a 33% reduction in revenue? Or not all revenue, but of a large portion of the revenue just because of that? And it motivated people. They were right then going, we got to deal with this right now. And it really stuck out to me that verticalizing and bringing in those experts from the industry, I'm not just there shilling them some crap. I'm teaching them about title. I'm teaching them about AI and title. I'm teaching them about, right, the stuff that I saw yesterday and the talks today and last week or in last year were all things that if I was in the title company, I'd go, man, I needed to know that.
Yeah.
This valued me. And what's interesting is I talked last night. I know it's hard to believe I stayed up and drank at all your parties, but all the people I talked to, there was a great mix of people that said, I'm not even a client yet. They said yet.
Yeah.
They didn't say I'm not a client. They said I'm not even a client yet. And this was so valuable to me. And that's what really made me think about this. And so what I would say is, as a baby step, anybody out there that has certain densities and verticals, maybe you think about putting on a conference just for that vertical in your area. Maybe it's small, maybe it's lunch and learn style, but start leaning into this understanding of we are partners with you. If your title company doesn't make money, I don't make money.
Yep.
And it's exactly what we've always asked for, right, Don? We want a seat at the table. And I think this is your way to get a seat at the table is provide value. So that's my take. We've run a
And you
little
can provide
over.
top line value. And if you can provide top line value, you'll have the stickiest customers you've ever had in your life.
True story. And Bill Butler said, what if you were in a restaurant hospitality vertical only in 2020? We tackled that. We described that as extremely painful, Bill. And I think that's one of the things you think about multiple verticals and multiple verticals that allow you to have either some inverse relationship of their failure or something that's maybe weathered a little bit better than some of the other verticals as you go through it. And kind of having to do a bit of an assessment of what are my risks?
Yeah.
If I take this vertical on, what are my risks? So Shawn, I just want to say thank you for being here. I really wanted to do this just because I was so damn enthralled by how valuable this was, and I just want to say you guys crushed it. You shouldn't let that Matt Lee guy come speak though. That's
I'm going to sleep
failure.
a lot this weekend because throwing these events is just stressful.
Yes, true story.
Yeah.
So we're gonna hand it over, Dom. If you'll close us out. Thank you, Shawn. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for joining us, Shawn. This was an amazing episode. That is our show for the week. And another quick housekeeping item. We're going to be taking a couple weeks off. If you celebrate Thanksgiving, please enjoy it next week. We will not be back until December 8th while the studios does some work. So we will see you then.